Okay, well, welcome then to our end-to-end data pipelines Microsoft Fabric from ingestion to analysis. My name is Brian Rutherford. I'm the CTO here at Analytics. I'm a data engineer, 20 years experience, and also an educator. So that's the American phrase, isn't it? So basically, I do a lot of training as well as consultancy, and I like to do these webinars to pass on that knowledge and to generate some interest in obviously this technology and obviously in our company as well. So we are a Microsoft partner. I'll come back to that at the end of this presentation. What I intend to do then, just to get into it, is the following. I should clarify, I've rehearsed this a few times and I got it down from 2 hours to 1 hour, so you'll be glad to know that I'm not going to be droning on too much. I'm going to try to keep it as snappy as possible. So I think I've got this to a point where if you've seen Fabric before, you're probably going to go like that. Right? This is quite interesting. It's showing you some new things here. If you haven't seen it before, that's fine as well. I'm taking you through from the very beginning as well. I'm going to try and keep it as interesting as possible. So it's not going to be me just going, here's a pipeline, here's a source, here's the target. You know, all that's kind of, so you can watch YouTube videos forever and watch that kind of stuff. I'm going to show you things I think you're going to see are new. So we're going to look at ingesting data in this end-to-end pipeline process in Fabric by using a pipeline. So what I call a bread and butter component. Get a source, get a target, that's fine, bring it in. And when we do that, we're going to bring it into what's called the bronze layer. So this is this Medallion Architecture idea that's quite common now. And this is going to be our raw data. So we're going to see where that's going to be stored. I'll show you that very shortly. Typically, that raw data is what your data engineers and your data scientists are looking at. They're going to be looking at that data, manipulating it in various ways. And then going to bring some data in to create some silver tables. I'm going to do this by using a copy job component, which is brand new to Fabric. Yeah, I'm pretty sure none of you have seen it before, if you've seen a bit of Fabric in the past. And this is a really super powerful component, which takes one part of the pipeline and says, I'm going to create a node here, a pipeline node that's going to be all about copying data, and that's all it does. And it's got this option to go in and do an incremental load as well. So it's going to be this upsert idea of update the records or insert new ones, all handled automatically by Fabric. So pretty good. We're going to see a third option there. We're going to bring across some data to create some silver tables. This is where we have our kind of enhanced and validated data, and that's going to be using a shortcut table. And this is, again, another brand new feature, hot off the press, as they say, and this is going to basically say, point at a SharePoint folder, and that's it. From that point forward, Fabric goes, boom, pulls across the data, creates the table for you, and anything that appears in that folder from that point forward automatically gets pulled across into that table. So it's a kind of like a materialized view. That kind of makes no sense for some of you data people out there. But it's all handled by Fabric. Even better, I'm going to show you one where it does that, but it takes the data and it analyzes it using machine learning and generates sentiment analysis automatically. So we're going to create a sentiment analysis table as the output of that. So trying to keep things interesting. That's some new things. So we'll see that in our run through. We're going to look at then taking that silver data, or taking my bronze layer, I should say, data, and moving it into the silver layer to end up with a set of silver tables. So that's going to be our kind of sort of a goal there. And the last part of that is to then use the other components. So we'll see the data flows as part of this process, and we'll see then notebooks. And what we're going to see very shortly is that there's a kind of a low code, kind of no code component idea up to code and complexity. And really, Fabric, Microsoft have provided to you in Fabric a set of options for those who don't want to really be coding stuff, but just do point and click, and those who are happy to go and do some kind of coding. And we'll see when we get to that point, nothing is actually that tricky or difficult. The end of that will be then our gold layer will have its highly aggregated and curated data, which will then build a semantic model on for Power BI. And we're going to see in Fabric, Power BI is integral to Fabric, it's built into it, and it's got a really clever thing called Direct Lake, which again is a new feature here where it says I'm going to go and actually access the data directly from the data lake. And I'll talk about that when we get to it. And then build the Power BI report using that semantic model. So that's going to be the process, literally from end to end. And we're going to see a couple of things during this. I'm going to try to indicate to you what I call light bulb moments, where we're going to say, right, that's quite interesting. That I've not seen that before. That's pretty cool. I'm going to try to point these kind of things as we go along, so that you can sort of note these in your mind and go, right, okay, I haven't seen that before, and I could really use that kind of option. So we'll get to that process as we go through this from bronze to silver to gold. Bit more to say very quickly in my preamble here. Here is a diagram that I put together of Fabric, so I'm not going through this in a lot of detail. I've got a YouTube video, so I'm not plugging myself here, but, well, I'm plugging myself. In fact, a YouTube video which I can point to you at the end of this. I'll send you a link to this afterwards, which details this architecture diagram in a lot of detail, for about 20 minutes. I haven't got time to do that, but I'm using this diagram here to just indicate to you that Fabric is platform as a service. It's a unified system that says, okay, rather than having different databases in different places and having this kind of sort of siloed kind of approach, we're going to bring it all under the one roof. Not only are we going to do that, we're going to have it where we're going to be serving our analysts, our engineers, and our scientists all from the same foundation. So they can all go into this same platform, and using the different components that are in there, they'll get to access and get the functionality that they actually need in this unified platform. And we've got a couple of things to point out to you in the diagram, which I'm going to come back to as we go through this over the next 55 minutes. Number one, in Fabric, there is a workspace, which is basically a folder. We'll create a folder, we'll then create the components that will sit in that folder. So you can create different database types, lakehouses, warehouses, event houses, etc. And you can place them in that folder. They're all stored in one place. You can create your different ETL components, so your copy jobs, your pipelines, etc. They can also be in that same workspace, that same folder. So we're going to get a sense then, light bulb moment here, that you don't have to have things all over the place. They're all going to be in the one storage, and then you can then give access to them to different users using the kind of the unified governance. So this is the purview which sits over everything and controls this by role-based access, and also has a kind of sort of fine-grained access as well for the data. So workspaces, we're going to be creating these components, and those components basically are going to be our different database types. We're going to create a lakehouse and a warehouse, and that's going to be reading from one lake. So another light bulb moment there is that Fabric in this unified platform has got one storage layer across all database types. It's a data lake where it has unstructured and structured data, and depending upon the database type, either automatically is writing to reading from one lake, or you might have to switch that option on. But certainly that's going to be the kind of unified storage layer for the whole of the database types across this system. Why is that useful? Because if I build a lake house and a warehouse and an event house, maybe a SQL Server instance, etc., all in Fabric, I can be in my lake house and I can say, I think I'll create a shortcut to my warehouse. I don't need to move that data into the lakehouse. I just need to point to it because it's in the same data storage as my lakehouse. I can point to my event house data. I can point to my SQL Server data. So can't show you that, unfortunately. It's not part of this webinar, but part that in your minds there, shortcut idea. So it's basically, this is why this is a super powerful idea. So that's one of these kind of light bulb things I want to point out to you. Okay, how do we get access to Fabric? Well, we go in then to app.fabric.microsoft.com. That's what I'm going to do right now. So I'm going to come out of this PowerPoint here because I'm going to refer to a couple of things I'm going to come back to in another screen. Give me a second here. Okay. So when you go to this app.fabric.microsoft.com, you're brought into the Fabric area. A couple of things to show you. Number one, this window here, this interface, also is how you get access to Power BI. So I can switch to Power BI and looking at the Power BI interface. So basically they've brought them together into the one kind of web interface. So I can switch between the two. Why is that an interesting thing to know? Because depending upon the workspace, this folder that you create, it will let you create objects that either are for Fabric or for Power BI. So you can see here that I've got Power BI workspace. If I hover across that, you probably make that out. It's got a kind of a small diamond saying premium per user. That's telling me that's for Power BI components. If I hover across this one here, it says Fabric capacity. That's for my Fabric components. Okay, let's go and create a new workspace then, get into this. So I'm going to try to do a demo of all these different things bit by bit. So we're going to call this one webinar. Okay, so webinar. And when I create my workspace, I have to tell Microsoft what kind of components are going to be stored in that workspace. So I'm going to go down here. There's my Power BI components, and here's my Fabric components. So I'm going to choose Fabric Trial. This is a kind of trial. You can get that yourselves, in fact, and this lets you set up a tryout for Fabric itself. If I purchased a capacity, that would be me picking this other bullet point just here. Okay, that's fine. Just close that down, grand. Okay, so I'm in my workspace. That's it. It's a blank folder. I want to just go in and want to create two database types here to get into this. We're going to create a lakehouse. We're going to create a warehouse. We're going to use these for our end-to-end pipeline process. So for that, I'm going to go to New Item. Up pops this New Item panel with everything that I can create within this workspace. I'm going to call it Lakehouse. I'm going to call this one Sales Lakehouse. Okay, I should, while it's doing that, just say the usual thing, proviso, Murphy's Law, it can go wrong, will go wrong. I'm sure if anything goes wrong, we can sort it out. So hopefully it'll be fine. I won't get any kind of issues. But you know what it's like when you're finally doing a demonstration live, things can go wrong. So hopefully that won't be the case. There's our lake house. I'm going to get back to that in a second or two. I'm going to go back to my webinar workspace. I'm going to create a second component, a second database, I should say, and it's going to be a warehouse. Now, I used to be, a long time ago, an Oracle developer, and to spin up one of these Oracle databases was quite an involved process. But in Fabric, you can see here, all you have to do is tell it what you want in terms of the database type, and it's going to go in and it will spin up automatically. So why are we here? I want to show you then another light bulb moment, this unified interface. So it's not different experiences for different users. It's basically the same kind of experience to put right across the board. So what am I saying? I'm saying, number one, we've got here on the left-hand side a ribbon. It's got my home, my workspaces. It's got a thing called one-lit catalog. So this is a catalog of all of the components that I create within Fabric. Now you might imagine if I have multiple workspaces, I might have lots of different databases and different components. It can get very confusing after a while. So this is a way of narrowing that down to get a view of what's in that particular, let's say, workspace. Currently, I've got one called Medallion Development I set up prior to this. There's some items in there. Here's my webinar one. I can do further filtering as well if I want to. I've also got on the left-hand side of my ribbon, I've got a monitor. That shows me all of the components that are doing my orchestration and my transformation, and whether they've succeeded or not, and I can go back and I can look at that log over time. Okay, well, back here in my workspace, if I go back to my Sales Lakehouse at the top here, you can see it's got a kind of tab browsing. So each component that you open up has this kind of tab you'll see along the left to the right. Why am I here? I want to show you the unified idea. So we've got here my lakehouse. It's got an area on the left-hand side where it stores my data. I've got my tables and I've got my files area. So the files is for unstructured data. That's things like CSVs, JSONs, HTML files, doc files, Excel spreadsheets, etc. All of your unstructured data you can place in that files area. And my structured area is this tables area where I'm going to have my tables. And the idea might be that I'm going to bring in my unstructured data into the files area. That's my bronze layer. So while I'm here, I'll come back to that. If I go to the top here, I've got a ribbon that runs from left to right. I've got my settings, my get data to go and run various different kind of jobs to go and manipulate my data. I've got here to go and create a semantic model for my Power BI reporting. Okay, that's fine. I'm going to switch to my sales warehouse. Same kind of idea. So I've got on the left-hand side here my data. So there's my schemas where I might store my data. I've got my settings. I've got to get data to go and manipulate data in various ways. If I had any data in here, I could also go and create a new semantic model as well for Power BI. So we get to see common elements across these different interfaces to help us as users to make sense of the different database types. It's a similar experience, but there's different components within those experiences which are different. So they're not totally the same all the way through. Okay, now we understand that then, let's go in then and get into this. We're going to go out and we're going to create a pipeline. And for that, we're going to go to my Sales Lakehouse first of all, and in my files area, I'm going to create a new subfolder. I'm going to call this one bronze layer. So we go back, think about our Medallion architecture, bronze, silver, and gold. So we're going to create a files area and bring some files into this bronze layer. If I go back here to my workspace, let's create a new component. I'm going to create, I said before, a pipeline. So pipeline is one of these components which you may have seen before in different guises. Let me go in and just show you it. And what I tend to do is show you the different components for your orchestration for your pipeline building and explain a bit of these are the kind of interfaces as we go through them bit by bit. So here we go, pipeline. Let's call this one get bronze files. Okay, so that's going to build this pipeline and it's going to fire up another of these tabs in my window here, and then there will be my kind of web-based pipeline interface. So the way this works in pipelines is you've got a canvas, and the canvas is where you place the activities that will be working upon your data. So you can see here I've got my validate and run. I've got some activities already mentioned here. I go to the activities menu. I've got some more. So you get things like copy data, give me a script, or run a stored procedure, something like that. To get the full set of activities, I've got this menu here on the right-hand side. So you can see here then that the pipeline is a component which lets me go in and do things like copy data. I can control the flow of that data. So I have loops that go round and round and round, until loops for each loops, etc. I can go in and I can run notebooks and scripts, etc. And at the end of that, I could even message myself or other users to then say, right, job successful. So pipelines are quite powerful, and they can be quite complicated. So I'm going to do a very simple one to start off with. I'm going to do copy data. I'm going to add copy data and add that activity to my canvas. Okay, so not a very friendly interface. You can see it's got this properties here at the bottom. If I click away from that, it vanishes. Click back to it, it comes back again. Okay, let's give it a name. Let's call it get bronze files. Okay, I'm going to have my source and my destination. So it's basically going to say, where's the data, where do you want to place it? So my source here, I'm going to go to my connection, and I happen to have one set up ready, which is going to be my webinar files. So where's this? This is Azure Blob Storage. So somewhere in the cloud, I've got blob storage. That's a container that's got these CSV files, and I've prior to this set up the connection to that. So I could go and edit that and show you that. I'm not going to bother with that, but you can create a connection to your blob storage. So that's now connected to my blob storage. I want to say, right, this contains the limited text. It's CSV files, and it's in a file folder called webinar files. Okay, so that's fine. So I've got that set up. That's my source. It's a file path. It's a folder called webinar files. It's going to be CSV files. Is it going to work? Let's find out. Let's press a browse button, see if we can see those files. So it connects then to that data in the cloud and says, right, I found these files. So there's my CSV files. Great, looking good to me. That's grand. Let's talk about our destination. So we're going to go to destination here, and I want to go and point to, remember, we're bringing it into our lakehouse and into this raw area, this bronze layer. So we're going to go to browse all. Up pops my window here. I want to point to my OneLake catalog. Remember I said that's all the components in Fabric that you've been built that sit over the OneLake. There's my lake house. That's grand. I think I'll point to that. Thanks so much. Okay, I'm bringing in some files. It's limited text, and it's going to be placed into a folder called Bronze Layer, because that's the one that we created earlier on. So we press that browse button. There it is there. It just sets that as being the target. Looking good to me. Okay, one more thing to go down here, just double check, make sure it says CSV there. Okay, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, okay, Brian, this is a bit pernickety. I'm clicking here and clicking there, I'm doing some strange things. I'm going to show you in a moment or two a much simplified version of this. I've purposely picked this one here to say, right, here's a pipeline. You can do a lot of pipelines, but I'm going to show you a simplified version of this. So at the moment, though, let's go with this. We're going to go back here. Yep, looks good to me. Let's validate it. No errors. That's lucky, isn't it? Let's go and run this. So we're going to go to run. That's fine. We'll save and run. So that's going to kick that off and then start to run that in the background. So while it's doing that, let me show you then this other component. So let's go back to my diagram here. I said, okay, if that's like in the bread and butter pipeline, reaching up to a blob storage in Azure, pulling down some files, why don't I go in and actually build a version of that called copy job, which is going to point to, again, classic thing to do, point to database. So just give you another kind of flavor or something, and we'll make this incremental as well. So let's go back then. That's fine. I go back to my lakehouse. Just quickly just see if that stuff's in there yet. Not yet. Okay, that's fine. Just going to come back in a minute or two. So let's go in then, and we're going to go to our lakehouse, and we'll come back to the bronze layer. Let's go to get data and use this mysterious thing called copy job. So this is my second example then of ingesting data and building a pipeline process. So copy job. Let's call this one to get customer lookup. Incremental. So that's exciting. Okay, so can I create that? Up pops another panel. You'll see it in a second or two. Another tab there is my second tab. It's going to then pull up the components that consist of this copy job. If I plug in the power, that'd be good, wouldn't it? Okay, so the copy job then, as I said before, is like taking that pipeline, taking the copy component and creating a simplified but powerful node version of it instead. And what I get here is a wizard. It says, right, fine, where's your data? It's a SQL Server database. Where is it? Well, in true Blue Peter fashion, I'm going to go and just pull it across. Okay. Okay, so it's in a database called AdventureWorks. Some of you have come across it before. It's a simple database. It's really useful because it's just simple data. We don't need to get bogged down on what the data actually is. It's just sales data, so that's fine. We get that. Let's go then, press next. Okay, so it's connected to that database. Again, it's up in the cloud. It's in Azure, connected to that database. It's saying, right, I'm looking at that database. What's in the tables area of this, and what do you want to bring across and pull in? So we're going to bring across this table called Silver Customer Lookup. So I'm going to just jump over the bronze for a second, and I'm going to bring in this because this has already been curated, this data here. It's already been checked for data quality, etc. So I'm going to bring it into my tables area in my lakehouse. So press next, that's fine. Here's the clever part. Fabric says, okay, I've been asked by the users, can you just give me a copy job option that gets me my data, but can you also have it so it can be incremental as well? So let's go for that. Okay, let's have incremental. And let's say then, well, if that's the case, then what's going to be in my source file that's going to be a column that will let me know if it's been updated in the source. So I happen to have a timestamp column in my source data. That's useful, wasn't it? So I'm going to be looking at that timestamp column, and I'll know then when I look back at that data again and again, if that timestamp has changed, if it's been updated, that's the record I want to go and look at. Okay, secondly, what's going to be the right method? Well, I don't want to just append the data, just glue it on. I want to go actually do a thing called an upsert. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to go to the option called merge. That effectively is an upsert. What's an upsert? It says, if it's changed, update it. If it's new, insert it. And it's able to distinguish that because I'm going to tell it, okay, could you please look in this file at the customer key, so distinguish one record from the next. So that's going to be the records. Look at it using the primary key column and figure out whether they've actually been updated or not. How do I know if it's been updated? Because that's going to change. This timestamp will change. Okay, so it's all point and click, point and click, point and click. If I press next, it says, right, what's going to be your target table? Silver customer lookup, that's fine. Let's go for that. Next. Yep, looking good to me. There's my source, there's my destination. Let's set it up to run on a schedule. Okay, so we'll leave it with the defaults there. Save and run. So that's going to fire that up. While that's cooking, we're going to come back to our pipeline. Remember that from before? We said, let's go run this pipeline. So we go back here, we should have some files now in that bronze layer. So let's go and do a refresh. There we are. Okay, so we brought in our files in the bronze layer. Meanwhile, let's go back to our other option here. That's our get job, our copy job, I should say. That's currently in progress. And if I go to my monitor on the left-hand side, I might be able to see it. Yeah, so it's not quite showing it just yet. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so we're bubbling away there. We've got our raw files in our bronze layer. We're bringing in a silver table. So the great thing about this is what I can then do, I go back here to my workspace and I take a look at that copy job. I want to go and see, well, has it been scheduled? Yes, it has. So I go to look at my schedule there, and there it is. Every 15 minutes it's been set up. Okay. Now, I think I just saw a success there. Just going to double check here. We'll do a wee refresh. There we go. So there's my silver customer table. That's bringing that in. So it's now going to go in then every 15 minutes. It's going to check that table for any updates and bring that data across. And it's all been done, not automatically, but certainly it's been handled by that copy job. So I think that's pretty smart. We're getting Fabric to do quite a lot of the work for me. Okay, if that is the next kind of level up, let's go one level up and make it even more interesting. Let's go in and we'll actually create a shortcut table. This is basically a transformation that is even more automated, but it's really super powerful. And I'm going to show you this right now. Here we go. So I'm going to go to my Lakehouse once again. I'm going to bring in some silver tables using this shortcut idea. So I'm going to go to my option here to go and create a new table shortcut. And in the shortcut area, it says, right, what do you want to point to? Well, these are two brand new features. I can point to OneDrive. So OneDrive folder, that's brilliant. I can even point to SharePoint. So this is the kind of holy grail. The most democratic data source ever is a SharePoint folder. So you've got databases and stuff all over the place, blob storage, etc. But the one storage place that everyone can go to, you don't need to have a PhD to understand it, basically is the SharePoint folder. And you can drop files in that SharePoint folder, and Fabric's going to handle the data transformation and ingestion for you. So let's point to that SharePoint folder. Let's go in then. We're going to use previously saved connection. Okay, so I'm looking then in SharePoint. Okay, let's just do a quick aside. Here's my SharePoint folders. I happen to have one called sales CSV, and it's got two files in there. What's going to happen is it's going to say, okay, I'm going to take these two files, I'm going to append them together to create a new table. And if you drop any more files into that folder, I will automatically pull them across. You don't need to do anything, I'll do it for you. So it's going to go in then and pull it together for me. So we're going to go and say, right, fine, let's go and point to that folder. It's called sales CSV. I can even see the files in there. There they are. Okay, it looks like it goes right. Yeah, I can see this as a CSV file. I'm going to go in and create a table now. I'll come back to what this delta thing means in a minute or two. I'm going to create a table for you in your Lakehouse. I recognize it's using a comma to divide up the actual values, and the first row ahead is a header. So even better, it's picked it up for me. And then we'll say, well, what's going to be the name of your target table? Let's go and call this one Silver Sales. Okay, so that's fine. I'm pointing to my SharePoint folder. I want to then bring it across, and I want to create a table called Silver Sales in my Lakehouse. So I'm going to create, yep, looks good to me. Let's create that. That's going to then fire that up, setting all this up in the background for me. So you can see that's much easier than having to go and do a pipeline or a copy job. That's even more, they've really kind of made this kind of low code, no code approach to it. Now, what you'll see in Fabric when you do this is it places a kind of set of placeholder folder while it works away in the background, and you might just make it out the top right here. This is kind of running away here. It's kind of doing this kind of in progress type kind of idea. While that's bubbling away, let's create another of these. Let's go in, and I said before, I'm going to do one. It's going to be an automatic machine learning AI process. Okay, let's try that out. So back here again, it's going to be another table shortcut, SharePoint folder. I'm going to point again to my same SharePoint area. There's my shared docs. This time I want to point to my customer feedback folder. What's that? Let's go back here. In my customer feedback folder, I happen to have lots and lots of text files, or it could be doc files or whatever, PDFs, where it contains text. For example, if I go to my message just here, I've got some concerns with quality. That's not good, is it? Minor defects, that's not good. So we've got keywords in here which I want to get Fabric to go and look at automatically and to do some sentiment analysis automatically on. And again, if I drop more and more and more of these files into this SharePoint folder, it's automatically going to update that sentiment analysis. So how does it do it? It's super easy. I point to the folder. I then press next. It goes, all right, it contains text. What do you want to do? And you can see here, you've got some interesting things you can do. You can do things like pull in that data. It's going to pull out all the personal information and hide it in the resulting data. So I'll test this, emails and names all get access in front of them. I want to do it though using sentiment analysis. Going for sentiment analysis, that's fine. Press next. As before, it says, right, I'm going to do this for you automatically. All you have to do is point to the folder and tell me what the name of the table is going to be. So I'm going to go to, yep, let's call this one orders feedback. Give me a second here to make sure I'm getting the right name. Don't want to get caught out. Done. Yeah, orders feedback text. I've got a process further on which is going to be using that name, so it's going to make sure I don't get caught out. Though Murphy's Law. Okay, it's orders feedback text. That's fine. Let's call it that. Let's create it. So off it goes. Fires that up. Gets the SharePoint folder. Starts the sentiment analysis. Begins to go and create a table in my silver area in my lakehouse. While it's doing that, I'm going to go back now to my silver sales. So I said before, this is point to a SharePoint folder. It's going to append the data, and there it is. Now, during that process, it said I'm going to create a delta table. So what's that? Well, let me tell you, this basically is default format for the tables that are stored in OneLake. So if I go back for a second to my diagram here, we know we've got this one unified storage layer across the whole of this tenant, where I have my lakehouse, my warehouse, and other kinds of data can be stored in OneLake. When it's structured, it's a delta table. So what's a delta table? A delta table is a table type where it takes the data and it stores it in a Parquet file. A Parquet is a format that's super compressed and it's columnar, which means it can be uncompressed quickly and it can be read really quickly as well. Secondly, it has a log, and that log that goes along with the Parquet files keeps a note of all the changes in the data. So if I want to, I can use a time travel option to travel back and see the data as it was previously. How do I know that? I go to my file view. I'm now looking at OneLake, and there is my Parquet files, and there's my delta log. So that's the JSON record of thing changes over time. So that's a kind of a quick buffer's guide to that. I can't go into that in more detail, but that's what they mean by a delta table. So when you are storing your data in Fabric, in OneLake, if it's structured, it's always going to be this delta table format. Now, the delta table format for the lakehouse gives us this ability here that the format for the warehouse is a bit more involved, because warehouses are designed to be a bit stricter about the data. You can't just go and change the schemas and messing about the data too much. It's quite strict. So there's a bit of a difference between the two, but they're going to be delta tables. But the delta table for the warehouse has got a few more kind of bells and whistles. Okay. Well, I'm doing a bit of talking there. I'm going to come back here just to do a refresh. So now got my orders feedback text. Let's take a look at that. So while that's bubbling away there, I want to go here. How are we doing time-wise? I want to go to my back to my workspace, and I'm going to take a look up here. So while that's bubbling away there, it's going to bring back that data. Let me just do another quick thing. I said to you that these shortcuts are set up so that they automatically always look at the source, this SharePoint folder, whether it's the data or whether it's the files, the text files. So with that in mind, then, why don't I take that file called Sales Data 2022, take that file, wasn't it before, I'm going to copy it, I'm going to place it into that folder. So back here again, I'll take that, place that in my sales CSV. Wasn't it before? I've only got 20 and 21. Let's copy it here. Okay. And I tell before you tell you it again, it's going to then pick that up and bring that across and bring it into my table automatically. So while that's doing that, I've been talking here. There's my results of my sentiment analysis. So let's take a look at this together. Okay, now I've got here It's parsed all the text in those files. I've got 13 files in that, so it's the 13 document level. You can see here it's showing me the text, see that, all the way through. Notice that each of these, you probably can't make it out, but it's got the sales order number, SO45080. So each one of my files has a particular characteristic. It's got this sales order number. So what I'm going to do shortly is I'm going to use the Power of Fabric to pull that out of that text. I'm going to join that to my customer data and my sales data. I'm going to see who is the customer, what did they buy, and what was the sentiment of that particular order, because that's not in that feedback. It just says, right, thanks for, the widget. Basically, I don't know what that actually is, but I can really track that down. I can join that together then when I use the Power of Fabric and some of the components to go and do that. Okay, so I hope you found that useful. That's the kind of first pass over. That's kind of our first pass over this. Go back to our wee diagram here. So we've got our pipeline, our copy job, and our shortcut. And these two here, brand new, hot off the shelf. You have probably seen them before, and they really raise some interesting things you can do, especially this SharePoint idea, the kind of democratic folder used by everybody. That's an interesting idea to bring that into the kind of game. We've done a bit of bronze. We've got some raw files in my bronze layer, and I've done a bit of silver as well to go and bring in those tables that are validated, let's say, tables. Let's go and finish off the silver layer, and we're going to use that by using a data flow. Another component I'm going to demonstrate for you to take that data, move it, orchestrate it, and place it into my silver layer. So back here, I'm going to go back to my lakehouse. And I can do this in different ways. One way of doing it is I could go back to the workspace and create a new item, and I have to specify what's the source and what's the target. But in fact, if you're doing it within the lakehouse and you're saying, right, I want to take these files and move them into the silver area, I can just go straight to get data and say, right, let's go and create a data flow. Okay, let's call this one 3. Create silver tables. Okay, it doesn't like that full stop, that's fine. Okay, so let me just, again, I'm doing a lot of talking here, so forgive me. I hope you're following this so far. We've done a pipeline, we've done a copy job, we've done a shortcut table option using our SharePoint folder, and we're now in this data flow, which annoyingly I have to refresh because I went away from it, so I'm going to come back to it again. I'll just pre-populate it again. Come back, you can do it. Okay, so data flows. Well, what are they? If the pipeline is a powerful component that lets you do quite a lot of interesting things, and the copy job is the kind of other end of the spectrum, it's the simpler one. This is kind of in the middle. Basically, it's a component, it's a data component, a transformation component that's kind of low code, no code. And effectively, it's just Power Query. So what's Power Query? Well, let me show you for a second here. In Power BI Desktop, if I was bringing in my data, bring data in, that's fine. If I want to go and look at that data and transform it in some kind of way, I'd hit this button called Transform Data. And up pops this other application. It's a bit of a kind of weird thing in Power BI if you've come across it before. This other application kind of pops up within Power BI and says, here I am, I'm Power Query, and I can let you go and manipulate your data and mess about with it. And it's got the data that I want to work upon, it's got the data itself, and then it's got the steps that I can then choose to then work on to then change my data. Why am I showing you this? Because this component has just been taken and they've just lifted it and they've placed it into Fabric, and I've said this is quite a nice thing because it's basically a kind of low code point and click transformation tool that I can go in and I can work upon my data. I've got text tools, I've got numeric tools, I've got date tools. I can add columns, so I can enhance my data using, again, this idea of my text tools, numeric tools, and date tools. So if that's the case, then let's close that down for a second. If I go back here to my Fabric component, it's the same thing. Look, it says transform. Here's my text tools, my numeric tools, and my date tools. Here's my add column. It's just the same as the Power Query that's in Power BI, except it's a slightly neater, nicer looking interface, that's all. Okay, if that's the case, then we said, let's go in and let's get the data from our bronze layer. Remember that from before? So our bronze layer, let's take those and move them into the silver area. So I'm going to go to my more here, And I want to point once again to my old friend, One Lake Catalog. So there's my lake house. That's fine. Let's connect to that. So it's connect. You can do it. It says, right, it's fine. In the lake house, I found a folder called Bronze Layer. Okay, let's open it up then. And let's bring in some of these tables. I want to bring in my calendar lookup, my product lookup, and my territory lookup, let's see. So bring in these three tables, these three CSV tables, I should say, three CSV files, I should say. Okay, so you can see it looks a lot like the Power Query of yore you might have seen before in Power BI. There's my, on the left-hand side, my data. There's my transformations on the right-hand side. There's the name of the tables there, yep. But what's different and what's not in Power BI is this data destination. All right, okay. It doesn't really like that connection. Let's go in for a sec here, just try another one. That's better. Okay, so this is the kind of middle of the transformation options we can do. This is the middle of our pipeline components for our end-to-end pipelines. And this is one where let's just go in and say, right, take some of these tables or these files, work upon them to do some transformation. And this is a silver layer we're going to create. So we'll do a wee bit of cleaning up, renaming, enhancing. We'll place them in our silver area as some silver tables. So let's go and do that right now. I can see here, excuse me, that the tables, the files, it hasn't picked up that the first row is the column title. So we're going to fix that right now. So yeah, let's do that for that one. Thanks so much. Okay, let's call this one silver underscore calendar lookup. Next one. Same issue. Let's go and do that. First row is headers. Let's go and change the name of that table. Okay, fix that. Next one. Same idea. Yep, fix that problem. Thanks so much. Let's just deal with that right now. And I'll go across here and I'm going to go in here, rename it, and clean up the name. Okay, so I've moved that row into the header for all three of these files to create these three tables. I've gone in and I've changed the name of the table, so the targets are going to be called silver, 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 calendar, product, and territory, respectively. Let's do one more. I said before, this data flow component is like a low-code, no-code tool that I can use it's got some really powerful options, and it'll let me enhance my data as well, so I can bring it into my silver layer as those silver tables. So in particular, I can say my date here, that's in my silver calendar lookup, and I'm going to use my date tools over here. I'm going to go to add column. I want to get the year. Thanks so much. So let's go in and add a new column to my table. Let's have, not only that, let's all have the month as well. Looking good. Let's go one more. Let's have the week of the year. And one more. Let's have the name of the day. Okay, so it's going to pull out those values, and the resulting table is going to have these extra columns. So it looks good to me. Let's go back to our home here then. I think that's looking good. Now you can do a lot with this. I haven't got time to show you, but if you've come across Power Query before, you'll know it's super powerful. You can do lots of point and click transformations to go and change your data in various ways. Okay, that's my source. There's my target. Looking good. Let's go and save and run this. So off it goes, kicks off the process. While it's doing that, let's go back to our workspace again. So we get a sense then, now we're building these components and they're all going to be in the same place, bit by bit by bit. So we've got our basic silver tables here being set up. Okay, let's go back. And again, one point to make, just to kind of clarify that again, I've got here from my pipeline, I've got schedule. From my copy job, I've got schedule. From my data flows, I've got schedule, so I can schedule all of these components, all of these pipeline components again and again to run at different times, or to run, let's say, in order. And if I want to get even more powerful, I can put these into my pipeline. Let me come back to that. While that's doing its thing, then let's go back to our model here and say, right, fine. If that's my data flow, then what about this other one here? It's the last of our options here, and it's called a notebook. So what I'm going to do is we're going to take the silver tables. I'm going to take those tables and I'm going to aggregate them and create a set of highly curated tables that I'll use for my business analysts and decision makers, and they can use Power BI to access that data. So you can see there's a process here of kind of bronze layer, data engineers and data scientists. That's my lakehouse. I've got my silver layer, still maybe scientists and engineers, possibly my analysts, looking at the delta tables in my lakehouse. We're going to go now to the warehouse. We're going to move these across from the lakehouse into the warehouse to have that power of the warehouse in terms of this is data with a high integrity with strict rules upon it, and this is what I'm going to present to my executives, let's see. Okay, to do that then, I'm going to go back here again, back to my lakehouse. Okay, now we know that in the lakehouse, we've got up here this get data button, and we could use that to then call upon the other components, the components that we use for our pipelines, pipeline or copy job, etc. A notebook's slightly different. It's a wee bit different because it's doing a particular thing. Let me come back to my diagram here. Here's my components. So copy job, data flows, pipelines, and notebooks. I'll maybe come back to event streams later on. So notebooks then are different. Notebooks basically are going to be using the Spark compute engine. The pipelines and the copy job and the shortcut joins or shortcut transformations have got their own kind of internal compute process that they use to do the kind of the transformations and the pulling and the ingesting of the data. But notebooks are special in the sense that notebooks can use the Spark compute engine, this powerful compute engine that's designed to handle large amounts of data and to let you go in and do a lot to the data. So notebooks of all of these components here are at my kind of far right as being the complicated or most flexible pipeline component of them all. And I'll explain why, show you that in a moment or two. So now we understand that, we're going to go here to our lakehouse, and I'm going to create a notebook. And just to clarify, I'm going to take these silver tables, which have just appeared, hopefully. Here we go. So there's my silver tables that have been created by my data flow. I'm going to take some of these, I'm going to join them together, I'm going to aggregate them, I'm going to place them in my warehouse, which has been happily just sitting there, been ignoring it so far. I'm going to place that in my DBO schema in my warehouse. Okay, here we go. This is exciting, isn't it? Let's go and do it. So create a new notebook. Okay. When I create a notebook, I want to note a couple of things. Number one, it's got on the left-hand side, there's my data. So it's kind of the same unified experience that we looked at before. We know we've got our sales lakehouse, there's the data, there's the warehouse, there's the data on the left-hand side. So in the notebook, there's my data again on the left-hand side. I can even bring in some others if I want to. On the right, I have this canvas here, and this canvas contains what are called cells. So at this point here, some of you are kind of going, oh no, this involves Python. I don't know Python at all. I'm going to give you a bit of a bluffer's guide. I'm going to show you, in fact, that notebooks are not only super powerful, but you can actually get into using them. And they're probably the most powerful component of all of these things. You don't need to know Python, really. You don't have I can have an expert at Python to get an understanding of what it's doing. So let me do that in a moment or two. At the moment, though, I'm going to go in here. I want to go and create a couple more cells. And we'll see that what we can do is we can run these cells. There's a run button just there. So the code that's in that cell, I can run it. So it's kind of like a worksheet in SQL Server Management Studio, isn't it? You can go and take that text, click and drag over it, and then run that bit of text just in your worksheet. Here we go. I'm going to say the following: create gold tables. I'm going to make that heading 3. Okay, so that's my markup. I'm going to create a code cell. Next one, I'm going to say create sentiment analysis. Okay, I'll have that as heading 3 again, just so you can clearly see it, and I'll put another code cell. That's grand. And I'll go back here and I'll just delete this one. Don't want this one anymore. Okay, so there we go. So I've got some code I'm going to take, and you're not going to type it out. It would be here for another half an hour. I'll be typing this out. I'm going to just take it and copy it from elsewhere. So give me a second here. So here we go. I'll explain a bit about this in a moment or two. Give me a second here. So you're looking at this thinking, no, this looks quite difficult. It isn't that tricky. Okay. Copy that. Paste that in there. Okay. Here we go. A few things to say about this. First of all, when I go in and create one of these cells in the notebook, let's say it's one of these code cells, the power of notebooks is I can go in and I can use different languages. So I've got this option here to say, you know, I'm just going to use SQL. I'm going to say select from the following table where the following restriction applies. Just a classic SQL statement so you can run here in the notebooks. That's perfectly fine to do as well. Or I could use Scala if I was a kind of an expert in that, or I could use R. I'm going to use, in our case, we're going to use Python. And it's called PySpark here because it's a particular version of Python that's designed to interface with this Spark engine that the Lakehouse sits over. Okay, I'm going to remove that. So once we understand that, then we can go up here to our first cell, and I can see then that I'm going to run this as PySpark. And I'm looking at this thinking, no, what is this doing? Well, let me show you. Bluffers died very, very quickly. All you have to understand with Python is a couple of things. If I've got a select statement here, and I said select the following columns from the following table where the following restrictions apply, group by, put in a restriction in order by. So that's my SQL that you probably kind of know and love. That's great. The same thing is available to you in Python. They're not going to reinvent the wheel and create some kind of weird and wonderful phrase for selecting or for saying where. They're going to use the same keyword. So I can write the same statement in Python. It's a bit different in terms of the order, but it is kind of the same. So you can see then that if you're kind of thinking, oh, this looks a bit difficult, it's not difficult actually. It's just a case of figuring out the order in which case you're going to put these particular kind of clauses. The thing I want to point out to you though, the thing to understand about Python is this. In SQL, when you run a SQL statement, it creates a thing in memory, a table in memory called a cursor, and that's what you then get presented, and that's what you might work upon if you're doing some kind of further processing. With Python, it's all in front. It's like looking at the actual machine, and it says, right, I'm going to read what's in that table, and I'm going to stick it into a table in memory called df. But this table in memory, they call a data frame. So this is the key to it. If you understand that a data frame is just a table in memory, it's going to stick the files into, or sorry, the records into, you can then work upon what's in that table. That means everything else makes perfect sense. So here we go back to our code here. You can see then I'm just saying read this table into this data frame called territories. I could have called it anything. I'm going to call it territories. Read, read, read. I'm creating 4 data frames. I'm then saying, right, could you go in then, join them together, and then could you then go and write them out to my warehouse? So I'm using a clever thing here. I'm using a particular function. Again, give you a bit of a buffer's guide here. This is a function called Synapse SQL. Where's it coming from? Because one of the powers of Python is you can call upon and you can import functions at the beginning of the code and say, yeah, I want to use that, bring that in, and we'll use that here. For example, I could have code and have a particular function that brings in, parses PDFs. Okay, so that's my Python then. I'm running out of time, so I have to go and just run this. So I'm going to run that. That's the one to create the gold tables. I'm going to bring in my sentiment analysis data as well. So let's just go and run this. So if I've named my tables correctly, this will run in the background here. Let's start going to run that. That's fine. Off it goes. There we go. So it's firing up this session. It's going to start to actually run the code. There we go. It's going to give us it here. That's it. So it's running away. It's going to begin to fire up this session for the notebook, and it's going to begin to run all this code in order. So it'll do this first cell, then it'll do the next cell after that. So while that's doing that, I'm going to come back once again to my workspace. I'm aware of the fact we've only got 5 minutes left. My apologies. I did think I got this down to an hour. So I'm going to just kind of keep moving if that's okay with you all. Hope this makes some sense so far as we work our way through this bit by bit. I'm going to just rename that notebook for build code tables. Okay, finished. Excellent. So that's my gold tables written out to the sales warehouse. It's going to go into the sentiment analysis. So if I go back to my warehouse now, so this is the other database I was talking about. I go to my DBO area here, into my tables, and refresh that. Here's my gold tables. Excellent. So we're now at a point then, we've gone through this process. We've got our bronze, our silver, and we've now got our highly curated and aggregated data that's ready for reporting. So this is the last part. I want to go back to my workspace. Okay. I'm going to go in then, and I'm going to create a semantic layer. In fact, I'm going to do it, I think, from my warehouse. So in my warehouse, I'm going to say, right, I want to create a semantic layer that sits over these highly aggregated tables. I'm going to use that semantic layer in Power BI. So let's go and do that right now. So let's go in, we're going to use Direct Lake. Explain that in a moment or two. Let's bring in our calendar lookup, our sales by period, and our sentiment analysis. We're going to call this one 5 gold semantic layer. Semantic model. Now, when I do this, I'm going to use Direct Lake. So what is Direct Lake? Direct Lake is a brand new feature, another light bulb moment here in Fabric that says I'm not going to have to go in and actually pull in the data and actually import it. I'm going to read it directly from the actual data lake. Now, normally that would be quite a slow process, but because it's from these Parquet files and these Delta tables, it's super fast. So you can go straight to refresh, and it refreshes that data immediately, and you get to see it straight away. No need to import it and hold it in memory. No need to sit there waiting 5 minutes, 10 minutes to refresh. It will bring it across immediately. Okay, so I'm choosing to have Direct Lake. I've chosen my tables. I'm going to confirm that. So it's going to go in and it's going to create this semantic model. Okay. So while it's doing that, I'm going to go back here to Power BI. I'm going to create a new report. So I'm in my desktop. So I'm in the desktop tool. I'm going to create a report here. I'm going to take that report, pull my data in from Fabric, and then I'm going to save it up in the Fabric workspace. So we'll get to the end of this. So I know we're running out of time, but hopefully you're still with me. Let's go for it. So let's do this. I'm going to save this first of all. Call this one Gold 7. Okay, I'm going to go to my file. I'm going to go to Get Data. I'm going to say, right, let's look at a semantic model. So hopefully what it's done is, there we go. So my webinar, my semantic model has now been created. So that's those tables. I choose Connect. So it's now bringing that in, and there's those 3 tables that I chose to bring in. And it's using this thing called Direct Lake. So you can see here on the left-hand side, there's no more tables view. It's simply just get the report view in the model itself, because it's actually looking directly at one lake, as opposed to having an interim import the data and hold it within Power BI. That's not happening. Okay, let's go in and we'll create a pie chart. So let's think back, way back at the beginning of this process, we said, let's go in to our folder that contains our text files. Let's create a sentiment analysis table, bring it across, then we'll use our notebook to pull that across into a gold table in our warehouse. So let's look at that. I'm going to have my sentiment is going to be from my legend, and my values are going to be the number of customers that I've got. Okay, so at the end of that process then, I've only got the 13 files, but you get the sense, hopefully that's a bit like a light bulb moment as well. You're thinking, okay, that's interesting. So I can basically now automate something like that, and all I have to do is just schedule that notebook to pull across that data into my gold layer and overwrite those gold tables, because that's data coming from my silver layer where that data is being incrementally added to. Let's do one more. Let's go have another table here, have another visualization. Let's go to our sales by period, and I'm going to have my x-axis I think I'll have my year, thanks so much, and my month. And I'm going to have on my y-axis, I'm going to go for the units sold. While here, pull that across. Let's also go in and sort this. So it's kind of a sorting, and we'll say, right, sort it, if you could please, by year and month. And could you also sort it ascending? Now, think back, we said, I think I'll take that sales 2022 document CSV file and drop it into that folder. And I just trusted Fabric to automatically pull that into the table. And hey, presto, there it is there. There's my sales data for 2022 has been included in that data. It's got and brought it in automatically. Okay, so we're saving this then. Here we go, we're getting to the end of this. I'm going to publish that back up to the Fabric workspace. So if it goes, success. Let's go back then to finish this off to our workspace, and we'll see this in its glory, in all its glory. There we go. So there's our report. So that report then is now placed into the same place as my pipelines and my copied jobs and my data flows and my notebooks. That it's all now in the one unified space, not in different places all over the place. It can now all be in the same place. And I'm going to look at that and you'll see then that's exactly what I'm going to see in the results. Pretty cool. Okay, so we've done, just a recap, we've done some very interesting things there. We've basically come in here, we've ingested our data using a pipeline, copy job and shortcut. We've done our data flow, a notebook, giving a flavor of that. And at the end of that, we've then visualized it using the Power BI report over that particular semantic model. Hope that makes some sense. Before we finish off, I know that you probably got your questions. I hope that Stephen's been kind of fielding those questions okay for you if you've got any questions. If you have any more, then please feel free to mail me. I should clarify at the end here that we've got, so this is the sales pitch at the end. So this is the kind of the payment in some senses. We are obviously a Microsoft partner. We do a lot of data engineering and visualization around taking legacy systems and pulling them into Fabric. So that's one thing to bear in mind. We also offer training as well. So I'm also the person who does the training, in fact, so I'm glad to know, or maybe not, but the Power BI training is a 2-day course, super useful course, really great. And I've got a 3-day course that I also offer as well for Fabric for Data Engineers, which is based on the DP700 course content. So that's this one just here, which is basically tons of stuff you can do. It's everything you do with Fabric, including all the Event House stuff as well. Okay, thank you very much for your time. Hope you found that useful.